Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about your first real project, which is working with wire to create a design of your own creation. So I have some examples of just some things that I've drawn here just so we can talk about. And then I have some considerations we'll talk about. But the whole premise of this project is that you would work with wire to create a design that's well connected together and well finished. So that means it doesn't have a lot of nicks from your tools. The design is neatly created. I'm going to suggest you do it as earrings. I think they're a simple way to begin, and so you would need 2 of them. So let's talk about this. I just started kind of doing some drawings, and this would be something that I could use with my wire as I start to practice bending. You're going to need practice, so don't assume one of these will be exactly how your final piece will look. Instead, just kind of think of it as a way to start practicing. We're going to use all of our tools that we practiced with before. So I've got my snips, my round, my needle nose, and my flat pliers, and I have basic 18 gauge wire to start with. Let's start with talking about how you can make loops versus corners in your designs that you might have. So simple things like using your round pliers can help you make a round loop. But, let me move these out of the way. But if I want something that's a little bit of a bigger loop and I want it to be more organic, I can slowly move down the wire with my tool. So I'm being very gentle, and now this is creating a much bigger wire. But you can also find anything that is a curve and you can utilize that. So if I want an even bigger curve, let's say now I want it to go in the other direction, I can bend my wire around that object. So it's a way to get a really nice clean loop without necessarily getting a lot of finger marks on it. Okay, so you can see I got a really nice clean shape there to begin with. Okay, let's say I wanted to do something that has stronger corners. If I'm okay with a little bit of a curved corner, what I can do is take I'll probably use my flats for this. I can take my flat nose pliers and I can bend my wire as tightly as I possibly can. And you can see I was able to get a pretty good corner. Now another option is you can use your steel block, which we have lots of these in the classroom, and you can bend your wire against one of these. The benefit of using this steel block is now I could take my mallet and I could hit it on both sides, and that would get me an even sharper corner. Okay, so you can see how you can utilize these tools to start making some of these shapes. We talked a lot about closures in one of our previous videos and spirals, so you should have a pretty good understanding of how to do those things. All right, let's talk about our considerations here. In your design, you want to think about how you would connect pieces together. So this is more if you're going to make a bracelet with some different designed elements, so different wire elements. But no matter what you're creating, you're going to need to think about beginnings and ends. So for instance, if I like this as an earring design, the end is just going to hang down and be by itself. That would be really sharp. So instead of this type of an end, I might want to think about ending it with a loop, and then I could have maybe a bead hanging down on another loop. I could also think of it ending in a spiral, so it's a little bit more decorative. Or I could connect it back to something that I already have. So you got to be intentional about the end. The top end is really important too in an earring because that's what will attach to the ear wire. So you can make a closed loop. Just remember, if you do that, you can't reopen it again. Or I could make more of this slightly opened loop, but you have to be thinking of those ends. Let's say I wanted to do something like this. So I'm making just a basic house shape. And my plan is to have my ear wire attach up here. Okay. Down here, I have this same issue of what to do with these wires at the end. So remember, I could wrap them around to finish it off. You just don't want loose, sharp edges. Okay. The next consideration is balance. Okay. If you think of something like this, so my name's Katie. If I started with a K and I have one piece of wire going down, and then I have another one that's going to go down, loop around, and go back out. If my piece hangs from here, the balance of this is going to tilt because of the weight on this one side. Sometimes that's okay in a design, sometimes it's not. In the same way, this house, this is not going to hold it in place. It would probably end up floating over to this corner. So you have to think about how you would keep it in your design. So instead of this, if I wanted to have this kind of roof, I could have done this in my design, right? And then that way, I have almost a little spot dedicated that would have held it in place. Okay, and then the last thing to consider with earrings, you want to think about if you're going to work symmetrically or asymmetrically. So do you want whatever design you have on one ear to be exactly the same as the other, or are you going to try two different ones? And if you are trying two different ones, are you doing that with intentionality, or are you just doing it because it's easy? If you're trying for symmetry, try to start with the same length of wire for each piece. You might want to start with a 5-inch piece and then do one bend on one, do one bend on the other. It's the best way to kind of get the symmetry. But first steps, it's all about kind of sketching what you're thinking, practicing bending the wire, practicing some attachments, and then you'll do a final version of your final piece when you're ready.